Welcome back to the Cherry Heat Check. I am Ricky Thompson. This is an unofficial Lobo basketball podcast where we will cover all things Lobo hoops. We have another new player that has joined since the last time we talked. We have 12 out of 14 players in Albuquerque practicing on the court together with Coach Olen, learning his schemes, the way that the coaching staff wants to do things. Recording today, Thursday, June 19th. We're here to break down the latest Lobo media that has come out as they spoke to the media. Coach Olen also was on the Field of 68 podcast with Jeff Goodman. We'll talk about some things I took from that as well. But happy belated Father's Day, first of all, to all the fathers out there listening, to my own dad, who is still a high-level golfer, good basketball player himself, and has always been a competitor and the reason that I love sports the way I do. So very grateful for him, very grateful to have this show to talk about basketball. And one thing I just wanted to mention before we get into the Lobo news and I bring my guest on, Mr. Joseph Archuleta, is that if you're not watching Caitlin Clark play basketball right now, then you are making a mistake, because she is doing things that I have never seen on a basketball court, maybe besides Steph Curry. So go ahead and check out some WNBA when you get a chance. But without further ado, in a second here, I'll be bringing on Mr. Joseph Archuleta to chop it up. Joining me now is one of my favorite fathers that I know, and I believe he just added another one to his crew, Mr. Joseph Archuleta, Mr. Lobo Knowledge. How are you, sir? Happy belated Father's Day. How are your 20 children? And how are things in Ohio?
No, they're good, Ricky. Happy Father's Day to you too, man. I saw on Twitter about a month ago you taking your kid to the Warriors game. That's awesome. That's what a dad. So congrats to you and being a good dad, man. So happy Father's Day. My kids are good. They're growing. They got church camp this week, and then we're going to a Cincinnati Reds game on Monday. So the Reds and Yankees. So we're excited.
That's cool. We were just at a Giants and Guardians game today, watching your home state team, or one of your home state team. Do you guys have
Yeah.
two? No, you just have Cleveland, I guess.
Yeah,
So
Cleveland.
I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we have you to talk about the newest additions to the Lobos. We have a Frenchman, and merci beaucoup, if I say this name incorrectly, Timeo Pons joins the Lobos from France. He is currently 18 years old. He's trying to make the U19 team currently. He'll turn 19 in July. He's one of 17 players trying to try out for that U19 team in France. He's a 6'7" shooting guard forward, has showcased his ability over the last few years, kind of rising up the ranks of basketball in France, having success at, I think, maybe like the second highest level before the highest level there, where he, over the last year, averaged about 15 points a game, over 6 rebounds and 2 assists, and then got called up to the top level where it looks like he just did not see a lot of time there. He's the son of a coach who also coaches in his home country, and I think with this kid, he has a lot of skill. Looks like he needs some time to develop physically and get in the weight room with the rest of the boys that are already hitting it there. But I think he's a good addition, and I think his game will translate based on what we've seen. Joe, I know you don't know a lot about him, but based on what you've seen, what do you think he could add maybe 1 or 2 years down the road if he hangs around?
I think the appropriate comparison for Pons, just off the film you watch, is that of Braden Applehans. The frame is a little light, but the kid can shoot. He definitely has a very polished shooting stroke. He has a little bit more off the dribble game too than Applehan. So he definitely has some a skill set to him. It's just the frame is needs to be developed for sure. I don't know if he'll contribute right away with that frame. I mean, he's like 6'8". They list him at 190. He's not 190. I'd say he's about a 175, if that. So he needs to get in the weight room, but he definitely has some skill. He hits the weight room and he develops. I mean, he could be a guy. So what I've seen from him though is just off of what I've been able to observe off of him on YouTube. He definitely has some offensive ability in terms of shooting the ball, and he has a pretty good vertical. He can distribute. He has a little bit of game off the bounce and off the dribble. So he's a promising prospect. I don't know if he'll see some major minutes coming off the bench this year, but we'll see. Only the coaches know.
Right, and with him, Lobos now have 14 players on the roster with the new scholarship limits from the House settlement that went into effect about a week ago. I believe they can have up to 15 scholarships now. I don't know if Coach Olen has officially said they're done recruiting. It seems like they're done, but they do have that open scholarship there. And Coach Olen recently went on the Field of 68 podcast to talk about this new roster with Jeff Goodman and kind of the style he wants to play. And what he had mentioned is he wants this team to take care of the ball. That'll obviously start with Dayton Albury. We think Luke Hopt will also be possibly a ball handler. And if you watch UC San Diego from last year, they want to share the ball because they know they're going to get the ball back with a lot of three-point attempts, sometimes early in the clock, half of their shots coming from three-point land last year. And I know we're saying this is starting from ground zero and this is like an expansion team. I think having Chris Howe and Milos Vicentic and some of the coaches come over is a big glue for this team. Having two guys that were under Coach Olen last year, even though it was their first year in that system there, I think it'll translate, and having these guys as other guys on the floor during practice will help speed up everyone else's progress. But Coach Olen mentioned they want to play with the pace and make good decisions. The end of drive decisions is something he mentioned, meaning once you get to the end of your drive, what are you doing with the ball? And I think Dayton Albury, with his downhill speed, will be able to find speed shooters. But Joe, I don't know if you want to, this is the time, but he talked a lot about the defensive aggressiveness and interchangeable pieces on defense. Can you just talk a little bit about what you expect from Coach Olen on defense and his philosophy?
Yeah, so and I'll touch on it again. I think we touched on it a couple pods ago, but UC San Diego was top 5 last year in forcing turnovers on the defensive end. They had a high Ken Pond rating. I believe it was in the top 30s on the defensive end, just for overall defensive rating. And if you watch the film, so I'll throw this nugget out there, and not trying to step on toes of anybody, but there's some stuff on YouTube. There's a great reference point for people to just type in UC San Diego defensive film 2023, and you'll see a website, and it has a lot of video on it. So Eric Olen's defensive system is actually impressive. It's a pack line defense, and it's man-to-man principles, but they disguise it as a zone. So what I mean by that is anybody who plays basketball, the pack line defense, it's free throw line down. You're not supposed to allow the opponent in that area. A lot of times the offense likes to shoot the gaps on that, or they draw up. Bo Ryan used to draw up from Wisconsin. He used to drop a lot of a flex offense to combat the pack line defense, and it was successful. But however, the flex offense with today's athletes, And with just how smart these coaches are these days, the flex offense is kind of inefficient against it. But what makes Olen's pack line defense impressive is if you watch it and it literally looks like a zone on the screen. So when they attack the gap, there's a lot of collapse and there's a lot of defensive rotations on the back end from the guys on the opposite side of the wing. So you literally will have a guy attacking the gap in the middle of the pack line. Well, then you have two or three defenders surrounding that person. Well, the defender on the opposite end is going to collapse towards the middle, and the defender up top is going to rotate to the end where that other person who is perceived to be open may be. It's a thing of beauty. I highly recommend people to watch it. So it's a lot of turnovers, forced turnovers. The thing about Olen's system too, he doesn't necessarily have many dudes crashing the glass on the defensive end. However, he'll have two or three guys basically down there battling. But once whoever gets the ball, the primary objective, if you watch the film, you have to be a ball handler to play for Eric Olen. If you can handle the ball, you're going to go. And then they get into their offensive set. But the defense it's basically a pack line defense disguised as a zone, and it has been efficient in KenPom. Each year since he's been at the Division I level, it's gone up 30 points each year. And he's always consistently been top 5 for the past 3 years in causing turnovers. So that made up for a lot of the lack of athleticism that he had at UCSD. They weren't very athletic, but they were smart. They were gritty on defense. I'm looking forward to the defensive side of the ball more than his offensive, even though his offensive is impressive. But the offensive side of the ball at times can, again, I'll say it again, it's a slow burn. So it can bore you to death, and it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. But the defense is what gets me excited about Eric Olen.
And if you go back and, I recently rewatched their UCSD game last year versus San Diego State, which was the first game of the season at Viejas. And it was a back and forth game, but it was an ugly, ugly game where the Trojans couldn't hit a shot in the first half. They're playing this defense that you're speaking about where it looks like a zone, and they just hang in the game because San Diego State can't score against it. And they have Magoon Guath and Farrell Compton who, have much greater size, but somehow, Eric Olen's team was able to hold them to like 5 offensive rebounds, even though they're playing this kind of, whatever you want to call it, defense, is, blob defense that kind of morphs in front of your eyes. But like you mentioned, they rebound very well out of it. And when they get the ball, it's immediately going up the court. And I think this year's Lobo team have players that are even more skilled, like you're mentioning, than that Trojan team that can run similar type of action on defense and push the ball quickly. So I'm looking forward, like you mentioned, to that defensive scheme. It's something I don't think we've seen at New Mexico in my memory. But the other thing he got into one of the other things he got into with Jeff Goodman on this Field of 68 interview is just recruiting and what really went in to budgeting the money that they had with 505 Sports, obviously the NIL provider for New Mexico. But things he just mentioned were the biggest challenge was obviously the lack of returning players. We mentioned Chris Howell and Vicentich coming over with them. I think that's big. But he said it's hard to get the value that you want for all the different roles you have to fill when you're building a team, with this many holes. But one specific quote that I thought was very interesting, just in terms of roster building and how the money was spent, that to me seemed like maybe the money either wasn't all used that was in the budget, or that he felt like it could have been used differently looking back, is, quote, "We did the best we could, but it wasn't the perfect version from an efficiency with dollars." So I know this is his first shot, probably handling this type of budget. I'm not sure what he had last year. I'm guessing it was probably under $50,000 to spend at UCSD. But Joe, when you hear something along the terms of it wasn't the perfect version from an efficiency with dollars, what do you think that means, and what do you think he learned going forward when he's going to have to construct a new roster every year in this new world?
Um, I think it's twofold, Ricky. I think he made that statement, and obviously that statement comes across. He didn't get it. They didn't get the bang for their buck. It was either that or they totally, not totally, but they kind of underutilized and didn't prepare for what they had. I'll be frank. Looking at the roster of UNM, it's a lot of unknowns. Jeff Grammer has stated that. Jeff Grammer has made mention of that to Eric Olen in Eric Olen's press conference. We don't know anything about a lot of these guys. We have a lot of guys on the roster who are coming up from very low major to mid-major. I mean, UNM, I don't consider a mid-major again, but according money-wise, we are a mid-major. But I think when Olen made that statement, I think he was being completely transparent with Jeff Goodman, and I was actually impressed with it because I think he realizes and understands that maybe they just didn't utilize what they had. And maybe they, I don't want to say overvalued the guys they had coming in, but maybe they just didn't really reach for what he now understands to be a competitive talent or level of talent. And I'm not saying this team is going to not compete in the Mountain West. I'm not saying that at all. But from an outsider's perspective looking in, if you look at the roster, it fits what he wants to do as a coach. And I think the guy can coach. I think he's going to get the most out of this group. But talent level compared to the other talent levels within the Mountain West, i.e. UNLV, i.e. Colorado State, San Diego State, Boise State, the top tier teams within the league. I'll even throw Wyoming in there. Wyoming had a nice offseason. I don't necessarily know if UNM's approach was as aggressive towards that top tier talent with what they had financially, if that makes sense. I think that's what he was alluding to. I'm not saying his team is not going to be good. I think just looking at the film and looking at the type of player that these guys are and what he does as a coach, I think Olen could coach. I think he's going to get the most out of this group. What will their record be? I can't project it. I don't even know the schedule yet. But I do know there is and this is just my personal opinion, Lobo Nation could kill me if they want. There is a major discrepancy in terms of athleticism from the past 3 years of Pitino's regime to this roster. Now, obviously, we haven't seen him play, but just on paper, there is a deficiency of athleticism. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I think the other question is when you're bringing in this many guys that are expecting, an opportunity, is can this staff, get all of these guys just want to care about winning and accept their roles in the system? Thinking about Antonio Chol, who everyone is raving about, and I think he does have the skill set to be an effective player. You have to kind of look at how he got to New Mexico, right? At Rutgers, wasn't able to find time over 2 years, and then goes to a junior college where he's playing against talent that isn't at the same level he's going to be facing. And he was able to do anything he wanted, right? He could shoot the ball whenever he wanted there. He could, probably, coach the team if he wanted at that point. But is he expecting to do the same thing, or is he going to buy in? Are all these guys willing to buy in? I'm guessing they are if they accepted, this scholarship and they spoke about these things with the careful decision making that Coach Olen put into this. I'm sure these roles were talked about. But once you're actually on the court with a whole new group of guys, it's a lot harder to just understand your role and where you fit in. So I've mentioned this for months, but the team that we see in November will be a lot different from what we see in conference play. But just hearing him mention, that it was hard to get the value for all the roles that he wanted, I can imagine the task that was. But I guess as a fan, just hearing him say that it wasn't perfect from an efficiency with dollars, it just makes me, I guess, hope that they are more on the same page with whoever they need to be, whether it be the NIL partnership or athletic department, whoever is scouting in order to get the level of players that they were looking for. But one of the more interesting quotes other than that from the interview with Jeff Goodman, and I know everyone's talked about it 100 times by now, but I'm going to play it back really quick. And it was, Coach Olen must be a Starbucks guy. He said he was going to pick up his coffee in Albuquerque with his wife, and the barista had a special message for him.
Story so far that could kind of illustrate, maybe even that surprised you?
For sure. It was we were closing on our house a couple weeks ago, and we stopped at my wife and I stopped at a Starbucks, and my guy behind the counter, instead of putting my name on the cup, he wrote, "Are we going to take another big in this class?" on my Starbucks cup. So shout out to that guy at the Starbucks. I appreciated it. But that was one where, and like Laura, my wife, was like, "No way." And I was like, "No, it's right here." Like everybody's paying attention here,
I really like that, Joe. I think it's cool that people are already recognizing Coach Olen out and about, and that people care that much. So, Joe, I don't know if you ever had a restaurant job, but I want to pretend you're a barista at Starbucks in Albuquerque, and you're making Coach Olen's espresso or whatever he gets. What question do you have for Coach Olen? What are you writing on his cup?
What's his example of efficiency in terms of recruiting? No, on a more serious note, what's his philosophy of scheduling? I would literally write that on his cup. What's your scheduling philosophy? Especially, and the reason why I bring that up, Ricky, is because we're transitioning into a new era of the Mountain West. We're going to lose the heavyweights of the league. I consider us a heavyweight in the league. I mean, basketball-wise, there's no way that we're second to none in basketball, in my opinion. I think perennially and historically, we have carried the torch in the old WAC and the Mountain West, along with some other programs. I'm not saying we're solely the ones, but we are definitely a standard within the league. So I bring up the scheduling philosophy because we're going towards a new kind of league next year. How's he going to approach the scheduling? Or is he going to do a lot of neutral site games? Is he going to try to get in a lot of MTEs? He's going to have to go on the road to face a lot of Power 4 conference teams. Because technically we might be a buy game. And what I mean by that, we used to buy a lot of people to come to the PIP. We actually might need money to go, let's say, for an example, if he was able to wrangle up us going to Paul Lee Pavilion at UCLA, or us going to Fog Allen Fieldhouse at Lawrence, to play Kansas. We need those types of games on the schedule. That's what I would ask him.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I'm hoping, like I've mentioned in previous podcasts where we talked about Grand Canyon, that they will indeed be added to the Mountain West this season, because I think we just need those two games on the schedule, because based on what I've heard Olen say about the schedule, I don't think there's any other big games coming outside of VCU and then that tournament that they're playing in Kansas City, unless I'm forgetting something. So it's going to be hard to build an at-large resume with that out-of-conference schedule unless you really, run the table almost in conference play. It's going to be very difficult for them to build that's tough of a resume. So going forward, like you're saying, in 26 and forward, it's even going to be more difficult to build. So I think that's a great question, and I'm interested in that as well. After Coach Olen had that interview, the Lobos practiced and they met with the media in Albuquerque a couple days ago, where they were peppered with questions. Chris Howell was the player that spoke for the Lobos, and he really sounded like a professional himself on the mic. He did have his name in the NBA draft waters this offseason up until the last day, which no one talked about, which I thought was weird. He did not remove his name from the NBA draft board until literally hours before it closed. And this is a guy that averaged less than 5 points a game last year. So the scouts must see something that he has not showcased yet in the games. And he spoke a little bit about how he thinks he needs to be more aggressive this year, and on the offensive side of the board, that he liked on offensive side of the ball. But I guess, Joe, other than him, who would you say you're looking for to be a leader on this team? It's easy to say Hal because he came over. I'm looking at a guy like Albury, who's played in this conference, has a lot of time playing high-level basketball. Is there someone else maybe I'm not thinking about that could be a vocal leader and just leading by example?
Well, usually on a good basketball team, Ricky, you have three good leaders. That's why Patino, in his previous years, he used to pick three captains. Every basketball team I played with, you had a leader that was on the floor at all times. That was usually your point guard. So I'm expecting Albury to be that because he's familiar with the conference. And I know it's an ever-changing landscape, but again, you can't undervalue the travel. You can't undervalue the familiarity with the opposing coaches and what they run. I mean, because there's new personnel, but you still got a guy like Sundance Wicks at Wyoming who's running some crazy offensive stuff, and Albury is familiar with that. You got a guy like Brian Dutcher at San Diego State, who Albury has scouted and has prepared for play his team. So I think that's undervalued. I expect Albury to be a leader. Obviously, Hal, and due to his relationship with the coaching staff and his previous stop at UCSD, I'm also looking for a guy like maybe Luke Houpt to be a leader. And I say Luke Houpt because I don't know if he's going to start. I wasn't at the open practice. I do know a few people who were. Everybody was very, very impressed with his approach, with his distribution, his ability to play make. But the person I spoke to who was at the open practice, that person stated to me, but they were very impressed with Luke Houpt was how he led by example. He wasn't very vocal, but he was just you could tell, a gym rat and a guy who led by example. And you need that leader off the bench, and kind of sets the tone for the rest of the guys on the bench. So usually you look at your point guard, you look at a returning vet, and then you look at a bench leader. Those would be my three guys I'm looking to kind of set the tone and establish what Eric Olen wants to do and what would find us success in the league. So I'm just looking. I mean, I don't know. I may be wrong, but if I'm assuming, those three guys would be the core leaders of the team, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I would have to agree with that. I think Milos Vicentić, just being someone who played in the system last year, I'm expecting him to maybe be more of a leader, just by the style of his play. But I'm going to bring up my depth chart for you, Joe. I don't think we agree on everything, so we can discuss a little bit. But right now I'm looking at the known pieces for sure of Dayton Albury at point guard. We're going to have Chris Howell and Chol starting. I don't know if you're going to say the two or the three. I think Kevin Patton will be a special player on this team, and I don't think he's gotten a lot of talk just because he didn't play a lot at USC last year. But if we look at the history of transfers coming just across the board. Usually guys coming from bigger conferences and down transferring are the ones that have success. And he, along with JT Rock, I would consider a down transfer. His first year at San Diego, he was on the all-freshman team there, averaged about 10 points a game, has athleticism for days. And I mentioned this to you before we started, recording here, is I think Kevin Patton Jr. is going to be the X factor on this team, because I'm not as high on Chol as I think some people in the media are. And I'm not calling myself someone in the media, but I'm just saying I'm not as high as I've heard some people speak about him, because I don't know if the way he played at JUCO is going to totally translate in terms of just being able to defend where they're asking him to defend. And I don't know if he rebounds at the level that some people are expecting. But I think Tomislav Boljan, the 22-year-old from Croatia, will be starting. Everything I've seen is he is a high-level player that will be able to contribute. We don't know what he'll be classified as yet, a sophomore, a junior, whatever it is. We're hoping at least 1 to 2 years with him. But contributors off the bench, I'm looking at Luke Hopt, like you mentioned, as a key kind of linchpin on offense that will move the ball, make the open pass, able to finish himself, and could be a ball handler. To Javis Miller from North Dakota State, I think will be a knockdown shooter. He could possibly find the starting role as well if one of these other guys doesn't, do what they're expected. And I don't know. I could go either way on JT Rock, possibly starting or not. It sounds like most thought is he would come off the bench, but I think a lot of people are just surprised at the style of game he plays, as not a real down low bruiser, but more someone that can step outside and have a finesse game as well. And someone else I don't think anyone is mentioning is Vicentich. And he did only play 20 minutes of that first game last year for Olen versus San Diego State. I think he was 1 of 6 with 5 rebounds. But if you go back and watch that 20 minutes, this guy is a maniac. He is going 100 miles an hour. He's guarding Magoon Guath in the post. Then he's going to run out for a 3. And then he's going to get a rebound on the other end. And he's not going to care who he runs into or what he runs into. I think he is going to be a fan favorite, and I think he gets minutes. He might even start. That's how impressed I was with his 1 for 6 performance that I watched, right? But I think just knowing the style of ball that is going to be asked to play, I think he's going to get minutes. And I know you mentioned Uriah Tennant as someone that was jumping out of the gym. What am I missing here, Joe? Who else could be contributing more or less than I'm speaking about in your eyes 4 months from the season here?
Well, I'll say this, Ricky. If you watch Eric Olen film from his past 3 teams, don't forget he had Bryce Pope and Roddy Anderson a few years back at UCSD, and Jerran Brooks. So I mean those were high level players, and Roddy Anderson obviously at Xavier, and Bryce Pope transferred to USC, and Jerran Brooks, he played at Washington. He played all over, but they had some guys. The common denominator with Eric Olen's teams, they all play hard. You have to have a motor. They may not be super athletic, but they are high IQ guys, and they play very hard. And that leads me to one of the guys I'm most excited about, and I don't know if he's getting much talk at all, but I do have a few friends from your neck of the woods, Ricky, over there in Northern California and in the Sacramento area. Everybody is telling me that not we, but the whole Mountain West, the national media is sleeping on Sir Marius Jones. I just hear that guy has a college-ready body. He's about 6'5", 200 pounds. He's sneaky athletic. And what I mean by that, by sneaky athletic, my buddy out there stated, think True Washington with a better body frame and a better stroke. And when I heard that, I was like, wow. So I asked my buddy, so he could defend like True Washington. He was like 100%. he said, I think Sir Marius Jones is going to be a contributor right away at UNM. He says, obviously, we don't know how the coaching staff, how it will play out for him, but he has a chance. And my buddy stated that he hasn't seen a player of his caliber in Sacramento since Matt Barnes. So that's high praise. Sacramento has some guys, but for my buddy to say that Sir Marius Jones is the best player out of Sacramento since Matt Barnes, that's pretty high praise. So I'm looking forward to see what he could do, if anything. I don't know if he can. I don't know what his IQ is, basketball IQ, but from everyone I've spoken to, the two people I've spoken to who are familiar with him, they're very, very high on him. They couldn't believe that he was actually going to UC Irvine. They were shocked that he was going to UC Irvine. One of my buddies said, this is a Donovan Dent kind of situation for you guys. He could have a year or two where he just, he steadily improves, and then he has that season where he explodes, and then all of a sudden he's getting $2 million in the portal from California or from UCLA or Arizona or something like that. So I'm intrigued by him. I'm also intrigued by Antonio Chol. I'm in your camp in terms of I know everyone's high on him. My big question with Antonio Chol, and I mean Pitino offered him when he was the head coach here, and you're 100% right. He was a junior college All-American, played at Garden City Community College in Kansas. That's a power in the JUCO world. But my concern with him is his motor. When you watched him at Rutgers, it just didn't seem like the motor was there. And there's two motors in a basketball player. There's the intellectual motor and there's the desire motor. I'm not questioning Antonio Chol's desire motor. When I watched him at Rutgers, I didn't know if he had the capacity to compete right away at the Division I level intellectually. And I'm not saying he's dumb. I'm not saying he's not a smart ball player, but I definitely think his athleticism and his skill overcompensated for him while he was at Rutgers, and that's what got him on the floor. At Rutgers, you could definitely tell he was behind in the IQ department in terms of high level D1 basketball. I can't call it at Garden City. I know Garden City is a national power and they compete at a very high level. That's high major junior college basketball, but also in junior college basketball, you're in. So instead of being in a conference, you're in regions, and so you could be in a region that's filled with junior college All-Americans like Garden City usually is, and majority of those dudes are D1 basketball players. Well, within the same region, you can have a junior college that produces nothing but Division II, Division III players year in, year out. So it's really hard to evaluate a junior college player, in my personal opinion. But I'm intrigued to see what Chol's IQ, how it's going to translate in Eric Olen's system.
Yeah, I like your call on Sir Marius Jones. I think he has a lot of game. If you watch what he did in high school, 2-time Sacramento area player of the year, already has a physical frame. Kind of reminded me, not the style of play, but at that age, his body already looked like a Cade Dodson in terms of muscle mass and being able to absorb and deliver contact on the drives. Has a mid-range game as well, from what I've seen. So I'm along with you. I hope that is a steal for the Lobos. But I guess as they are just beginning practice, Coach Olen mentioned they're just trying to install, the type of tempo and concepts that they want the Lobos to be comfortable with. They mentioned they ran the mile together, getting used to that elevation, and they're just waiting on the student visas for new French player Tomeo Pons and Tomislav Boljan. And he just said they're waiting on embassy and consulate appointments because you can imagine in this new world the number of foreign players that are trying to come over and get student visas. So they're still sorting through all that, but it sounds like they have enough to practice. It also sounds like Coach Mikey Howell gets in the practices with them and competes, and that's not to his brother's liking at times. But I'm just excited that we have most of the team in town practicing. Joe, do you have anything else this evening before we let you go? And we thank you always for joining me here.
Oh no, thank you for having me, Ricky. Yeah. So I won't say the name of who. There was an anonymous Mountain West head coach, a sitting head coach in the league, discussed with my friend and I on a forum, Eric Olen, and that anonymous Mountain West coach, he stated to me, and this is for Lobo Nation, he said, enjoy what you have with Eric Olen, because I don't know if he'll be around in 3 years. And he didn't say that in terms of a negative thing at all. He wasn't bad mouthing UNM at all. He was stating that Eric Olen is that good of a coach. My buddy, who one of my dear friends, he coached against him at the Division II level. Couldn't say anything but great things about him. He stated how prepared he was when he coached against him. Stated that his teams were probably the most disciplined team he ever faced. He faced them 2 years in a row at the Division II level, and he just said they were so disciplined on the defensive end. It was virtually impossible to even penetrate on them in terms of offensively. Everyone that I'm talking to within the industry just speaks so highly of him. I hope we keep him for a long time. I hope UNM advances in terms of, I'll just call it as it is, Ricky. I hope we get out of the Mountain West down the road. I think we have the ability, the capability to do that. We are the flagship program and flagship school within the state of New Mexico. And, our athletic department is the only show in town. So I hope we're able to not only attract Eric Olen, which we were able to do that, but I hope we're able to retain him when we have success, because it's not a matter of if, according to this anonymous Mountain West coach, it's a matter of when. And I look forward to hearing it. I mean, I know I've complained to you about the recruiting from time to time. I was like, man, it's underwhelming. I don't know if they know what they're doing. I don't think they have juice. But from all indications from everyone within the industry, they are telling me we have one of the best X's and O's coach in the country. So I'm just looking forward to seeing what we have here in Go Lobos.
Well, Joe, I always appreciate that knowledge. I think we should be hopeful as well. Looking forward to see what else comes out this summer as we learn more about each of these players. But I'm going to let you go here before I wrap up the show. So thank you again.
Thanks, Ricky.
All right. That was Mr. Joseph Archuleta. Always happy to have him on. He follows this news and ins and outs more closely than anyone out there. So always grateful for him to chop it up with us. If you're listening to the show on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. I'm going to try to keep these coming all summer to get latest news from practice out and our thoughts on that. And I just want to thank everyone that has listened and liked to the show so far. Hope you all have a great weekend out there. And this has been the Cherry Heat.